He offered her $100,000 if she could speak Chinese. He didn't expect her to answer in 9 languages. The hotel restaurant gleamed like gold that night. Chandeliers hung low. Jazz music floated through the air, and the smell of expensive wine filled every corner. Among the laughter and chatter, a young black waitress named Maya quietly carried trays between tables, her eyes calm but sharp. She had been working double shifts for weeks, saving for something no one in this room could imagine. At table 7 sat Edward Chase, a millionaire investor from New York, famous for his arrogance as much as his money. He was surrounded by his rich friends, all in tailored suits, laughing loudly about people who serve instead of succeed. When Maya approached to pour their wine, Edward leaned back in his chair. "Tell me something, sweetheart," he said with a smirk. "You from around here?" "Yes, sir," Maya replied softly. "Didn't sound like it," he said, mocking her accent. His friends chuckled. Maya kept her composure. "Accent or not, sir, the glass is still full." That made one of the men laugh louder. Edward waved his hand dramatically. "Oh, she's clever." "Tell you what, I like challenges," he said, tossing his napkin onto the table. "I'll give you 100,000 if you can serve me." In Chinese. The whole table roared with laughter. The nearby diners turned to look. Maya froze for a second, not because she was scared, but because she was deciding whether he was even worth a reply. Her heart thumped. She'd dealt with arrogance before. But this was different. She smiled politely, her voice steady. "Is that a promise, sir?" Edward grinned. "If you speak Chinese right now, perfectly, I'll wire the money tonight." The crowd waited. The music had stopped. Even the bartender leaned forward. Maya looked down at the tray in her hand, then back at him. "Sir," she said quietly, "you might want to keep your wallet ready." But before she could say another word, a sudden voice from across the room interrupted. "Excuse me, miss," another guest called. "We need help over here." She turned, torn between duty and the challenge. Edward smirked, sipping his wine. "Guess we'll never know," he muttered. Maya walked away, not in defeat, but with a small, knowing smile. She had a plan. That night wasn't over, and Edward Chase had no idea who he had just challenged. The next evening, the restaurant buzzed again. Same music, same golden glow. But tonight, Maya wasn't nervous. She had stayed up late practicing something she hadn't used in years. Edward and his friends returned, laughing louder than before. "Hey, the language prodigy's back," one joked. Maya smiled. "Welcome again, gentlemen." Her tone was calm, confident, almost playful. Edward smirked. "You ready for your big payday, waitress?" She nodded slightly. "Are you?" She began to serve them, perfectly poised, like nothing could shake her. Then, just as she set down his plate, she spoke softly. Not in English this time. "Ni de ju, Xiansheng." "Your wine, sir." The laughter around the table died instantly. Her pronunciation was flawless. Edward blinked, unsure. "Wait, that was Mandarin," one of his friends whispered. Maya smiled again and continued, switching effortlessly. "Merci d'attendre, monsieur." "Gracias, señor." "Dankeschön, mein Herr." "Arigato gozaimasu, sensei." Language after language flowed like music. French, Spanish, German, Japanese, Italian, Russian, Arabic. Korean. 9 in total. The room went silent. Even the manager, who had come to check the commotion, stopped and stared. Maya looked straight at Edward. "You said 1 language, sir. I thought I'd give you 8 more. Free of charge." For the first time that night, Edward didn't know what to say. His smirk disappeared. His friends stared at him, waiting to see if he'd keep his word. He cleared his throat, tried to laugh. "That was impressive. But how do I know it wasn't memorized?" Maya leaned forward just slightly. "Because, sir, I studied linguistics before I ever needed this job. I worked at embassies, but life had other plans." The weight of her words hit like thunder. The table went silent again. Edward looked down, ashamed, embarrassed, exposed. Then Maya said one last thing in flawless English. "Now, about that $100,000. The camera would fade out here, with Edward speechless, the crowd whispering, and Maya standing tall, tray in hand, power in her eyes. The next morning, Edward couldn't stop thinking about what happened. The look on everyone's faces, the silence that followed her words. He had built his entire life on power and pride. But last night, a waitress had made him feel smaller than ever. He tried to brush it off. She just rehearsed some words, he told himself. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. There had been confidence in her voice. Pain, even. Later that evening, Edward returned to the restaurant again, this time alone. No friends, no champagne, just quiet. Maya noticed him the moment he walked in. She sighed softly and walked over. "Back for another challenge?" she asked, half smiling. He shook his head. "No, just some answers." Maya hesitated, then nodded for him to sit. The restaurant was nearly empty, just the soft hum of a piano in the background. Edward leaned forward. "You said you studied linguistics. What happened?" She took a deep breath. "I grew up in a small town. My mom worked 3 jobs just so I could study. I got a scholarship to a European university. Later, I worked as a translator for international conferences. I spoke to presidents, ministers, even the UN." Edward blinked. "Then why are you here?" she finished. "Because my mom got sick. Treatment was expensive. I came back home. I needed a steady income. So I put down the books and picked up the tray." Her voice didn't tremble once. She wasn't ashamed, just honest. Edward felt a sting of guilt. "I had no idea." "You weren't supposed to," Maya said calmly. "You saw a uniform, not a person." That line hit harder than anything she'd said in 9 languages. He sat there in silence. For the first time, he didn't have a clever comeback. After a moment, Maya smiled faintly. "Don't worry about the money. Mr. Chase, I don't need your 100,000. Edward frowned. "But I promised." "Keep it," she said gently. "Just learn something from last night." Her words lingered in the air like music, soft but unshakable. As he left, Edward looked back one last time. Maya was serving another table, smiling, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But to him, everything had changed. 2 days later, the story exploded. A guest who had filmed the entire language challenge posted it online. The caption read, "Millionaire mocks waitress, instantly regrets it." By morning, the video had millions of views. People across the world were talking about the waitress who spoke 9 languages. Reporters showed up at the hotel. Influencers reposted her clip. Language professors called her a living example of grace under fire. And Edward Chase, he was trending for all the wrong reasons. His company's investors demanded an explanation. His PR team begged him to stay quiet. But he couldn't. That afternoon, he walked back into the same restaurant. this time carrying an envelope. Maya looked surprised, but calm as always. He stood before her, in front of everyone. "Miss Maya," he said softly, "I came to apologize, publicly." The restaurant went silent. Even the music stopped. He took out the envelope and placed it on the counter. "This is the $100,000 I promised, but not because you won a challenge, because I was wrong." Maya looked at it for a long moment, then said, "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Chase." "I owe you respect," he replied. "And maybe a chance." She frowned slightly. "A chance?" Edward smiled. "My foundation runs global education programs. I'd like to fund one, in your name, a language scholarship for underprivileged students. You'll oversee it." For the first time, Maya's composure cracked. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. "You'd really do that?" He nodded. "You reminded me that wealth doesn't make us better. It just tests who we really are." The restaurant burst into applause. Phones recorded the moment. Within hours, that video went viral too. But this time, for all the right reasons. A month later, headlines read, "From waitress to founder, Maya's language scholarship helps dozens of students worldwide." In her first TV interview, Maya smiled at the camera and said, "I didn't speak 9 languages to impress anyone. I spoke them to remind people. Respect doesn't need translation. Never judge someone by their job. You never know the language of their strength." Stories like this deserve to be heard. Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more powerful lessons.